Pleasant good day to my YouTube fans in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, South America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and in any other part of the world where you exist. Once again, it's my pleasure to bring to you another YouTube presentation. And as usual, I will greet you with my customary style. I, Imo Rameses Bakari, your psychologist and life coach from the magical community of Point Fortin, located in the Southern Caribbean. It is my desire to inspire you to rise higher. It is my desire to inspire you to rise even higher. It is my desire to inspire you to keep on working to achieve your goals in 2025. And it is my desire to continue producing inspirational YouTube videos. And this will be done through writing, through coaching, through counseling, through teaching, motivational speaking, feature addresses, research, community advocacy, mentorship, and any creative means to ensure that the message is communicated. We also remind you to support our channel and our work by contributing via the YPay and Patreon links, by contributing via the account information flashing across the screen, by partaking in our ongoing courses, our 10-week course entitled Fundamentals of Psychology, costing $3,800, the 4-week course entitled The Fundamentals of Public Speaking, costing $1,200 for students and $1,800 for the general public. The 4-week course entitled The Mastering Emotional Intelligence, costing $1,800 for students and $2,500 for the general public. You can also call us and book a coaching or counseling appointment, and you can do so by calling 1-868-778-5141, 1-868-779-2544, or email us at leadershipwithadifference@gmail.com. So, the motivational word for today. And this motivational word you may find a bit surprising. And the reason why you will find it surprising is because many of those who have been involved in the political process of the world, they have not given politics a good name. But nonetheless, politics is a noble practice. But sadly, many of the practitioners have not been all that noble. So yes, remember, as hard as it may be for you to appreciate or reconcile that, politics is a noble practice, but many of the practitioners across the world have not done justice to the nobility that should have been demonstrated through politics. It doesn't mean to say that some persons have not upheld that tradition, but many of you I know are convinced that it is far from being noble. So that motivational word, reflect on it and think about it critically. I will now do a little summation in looking at the political situation in Trinidad and Tobago and tracing some of the developments over time, and also asking you if we have finally arrived at getting true change, or are we really stuck with exchange. So let me just look at Trinidad and Tobago historically and briefly, and many people have defined politics in different ways. Some theorists talk about the art of the possible. Others talk about the process of governance and debating power among parties. But whatever definition it is, the interests of the people must be served well, and must be the primary motivator. Of course, your experience might tell a totally different story. But any action that is aimed towards promoting change, whether it is called a political party or not, in my view, constitute political action. In other words, you do not have to belong to a political party to be involved in political action, in advocating for change in whatever form or facet, you know. So politics, in other words, it transcends being a member of a party, and it transcends, many of the things that people will typically associate with politics. So over the years in our country, there have been many attempts at creating change and promoting change, whether on the labor front or whether on the political front. So in the 1920s, we had a number of labor action throughout the Caribbean, culminating with the high point in 1937. And we have also come to know of the contributions of our great leader, the anointed Chuba Uriah Boss Butler, in 1937. We have also come to know about the contributions of people like Elmer Francois, Christiana King, Jim Barrett, and many others who fought for creating an environment of dignity for workers in Trinidad and Tobago, and the many other leaders across the Caribbean who were part of that struggle. So 1937 is a watershed year in terms of the people agitating and being encouraged by their leaders to assert their right for human dignity in terms of just wages and in terms of good working conditions. We had 1970 and the 1970 revolution led by the National Joint Action Committee, which consisted of progressive trade unions and the leaders of the Student Guild of NJAC, and those leaders went on to be leaders of NJAC. NJAC, as we all know, was led by Makandal Daga, and we had leaders such as Kafra Kamon, Nayagoro Ume, Winston Leonard, George Weeks of UWTU, and leaders like those who were in the forefront of the 1970 revolution and who were imprisoned several times in their quest for advocating and organizing the people. As we know, there were 56 glorious days of protest with thousands of people who were on the streets of Trinidad and Tobago between February to April 1970. And that is definitely what we call a watershed year in the political process of Trinidad and Tobago, where those leaders try to redefine the paradigm of foreign control and dominance of the economy, where the commanding heights were not in the hands of locals, and where after those activities, for the first time, Africans and Indians had the opportunity to rise to positions of authority in oil, in banking, in insurance, etc. They also sought to redefine the paradigm where, because of how you look, you had a particular place in society. So regardless of how you look, you had a place to be at the top and not at the bottom, where many felt, where the whole social structure suggested that you should have been. So that contribution, which sadly is not reported thoroughly in our history books and our social studies books, is a sad indictment of educating the nation of the contributions of those persons who definitely influenced many of the changes in Trinidad and Tobago at the time, in terms of the nationalization of foreign banks, right, in terms of the nationalization of the oil industry, etc. We must never ever forget, right, in terms of promoting consciousness upon all groups, in terms of their identity and identifying with their ancestry, not to create division, but to forge a greater sense of unity among the races of Trinidad and Tobago. It is instructive to state that NJAC was one of the organizations that promoted unity among the races, where they spoke about African and Indians unite. They being the two major races, and also constantly promoted the idea that without unity, national development would have been compromised. Sadly, many propagandists promoted NJAC as an African party, I could tell you, as a person who was formerly associated, it was never such an organization. And its contribution to national unity is not given the credit that it truly deserves. At one point in time, NJAC was one of the only organizations that celebrated Emancipation and Indian Arrival Day consistently, long before they were holidays. And NJAC, of course, was instrumental in the ultimate declaration of that day as a public holiday in 1985. So I'm saying all of these things because it's important historical facts that people must appreciate in terms of the whole political evolution of Trinidad and Tobago. So between 1956 to 1986, we had uninterrupted PNM rule, and the people again, in 1986 when the election was called, they expressed themselves in terms of the results that transpired, where the NER won by 33-3. And people in their own judgment, through their vote, sought to bring about some kind of change. But as we all know, those who lived through that period, it was a very painful period economically. You know, wages were frozen, cola were withdrawn, the price of oil was very low, and you know, economically, the state of living was highly pressured, and you had people losing homes and many people migrated. So that attempt at change, I will say it didn't really manifest. We had 1990, rightly or wrongly, and that is a subject to another debate, was an interruption in terms of the direction of Trinidad and Tobago. It didn't last long, a few days, but nonetheless, that was another occurrence in the whole evolution of activities politically and otherwise in Trinidad and Tobago. Then we had another attempt again with people through the electoral process looking at 1995 results, where we had the 17-17-2, 17 PNM, 17 UNC, and 2 to the NER, and the UNC and the NER came together and formed a government. But that was what we could call a kind of tumultuous time in terms of the political relationship with A.N.R. Robinson and Basil Pandey that resulted in a split. And then, you know, we had again in another election in 2001 where, you know, the NER was no more in terms of the arrangement with the UNC. And then we had, you know, Robinson being president at the time. And in that result, we had an 18-18 situation. And where then President Robinson, you know, said in his own way that he was awarding the office to the PNM based on ethical and moral values. And that was subject to a lot of debate and discussion in the society. And then we had another election in 2002, and between 2002 to 2010, we had PNM rule. Then in 2010, the people again, with the formation of the partnership, they again made an expression through the results. 29 seats going to the partnership and 12 to the PNM. Right? 2015, they came out of office. Between 2015 and 2025, before the last election, we had PNM rule again. And then again, surprising to some, not surprising to many, we had the last election, which was just a month ago, with the UNC winning 26, the PNM 13, and the TPP 2. So, the topic I said at the beginning, have we arrived at true change, or are we stuck with exchange? When we look at, you know, the performance of governments across time in Trinidad and Tobago, a big deal is made about building a fire station, building a police station, constructing a hospital, you know, paving roadways, etc. I am saying these are expectations. And once the country have the resources, the citizens expect that any government in power should deal with those issues. And even though you don't have the resources, we expect that the politicians will level with the citizens, will report to the citizens, not through debates in parliament alone, not through just a midterm review of the budget or through an annual budget. But we must move in a direction to put the people at the center of development. But the people's involvement in the political process in Trinidad and Tobago has been relegated to a vote. And the only time that the leaders really show a genuine interest in meeting and greeting the people is at the election time. That has been the history of the politics of Trinidad and Tobago. We have also had, sadly, the phenomena of promises, which have proven, that phenomena has proven to be very painful and deceitful. As the old saying goes, a promise is a comfort to a fool. So people in my beloved country, you cannot place your faith in the promises of politicians. It has not worked, it is not likely to work. What we need is people coming and telling you the truth of the nation affairs. Because to promise, particularly when you're not in office and not around the situation of the money, though you will have a general appreciation, could be very, very deceptive. In that when the situation is appreciated, you may have a backtracking, a back rolling in terms of what is possible. Remember, during the last regime's reign, when Petrochim was closed, there was a lot of debates concerning the pros and cons of it by government, by economists, and by others in the society. Right? Many argue that a lot of the reports that were done about Petrochim, none never suggested closure. We all could appreciate, when we look at international standard, given the thousands of employees who were there, that was a factor. We all could also appreciate that no time in the history of the refinery of Trinidad and Tobago it was run to its full capacity because we were not producing oil to run it at that level, and we always had to import, which was obviously a significant cost. We have also had the phenomena of appointments that were questioned by many in society in terms of whether those people should be rightfully be in certain positions, right? The whole question of political patronage. We have also had the issue of corruption rearing its head in many ways, right? So the bottom line is that the eventual closure took place. And in one of the pronouncements of the former Prime Minister, he emphatically stated it will not be closed, and yet emphatically it was closed. So I'm saying, with the current promise of this regime about restarting Petrochim, why it may sound nice, why it may create a lot of nostalgia, level with the citizens and give them data on which to build that faith, right? Come to them, level with them. I know personally a lot of guys who are top practitioners in the field of refining over the years. They're all retired now. We have a lot of the technical capacity and knowledge where people like those can give advice, all right? And the simple point I am making, bring the facts to the nation and convince them that this restart is possible. Do not create false hope and false expectation, right? And if that practice could be instilled in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, we certainly will be moving in a different direction. I have always advocated that 41 representatives in Parliament are not sufficient, right? Although the electoral process suggests that is the arrangement, to be the only ones being the final arbiters in terms of policy decisions. If the people are so important, we need to restructure our constitution to give the people more power. We need to build more institutions that will, give them that empowerment. And one of the suggestions I made in a previous article I wrote on Facebook a few years ago is that give the communities, give the constituencies a vote that is, supported by law. So in other words, when an important document as the budget is to be passed, beside the vote in Parliament, you also have the vote of the constituencies. Of course, that wouldn't be possible given the arrangement under which we operate. But that will be a true step in giving people an official voice. So each constituency should have community councils or constituency councils, all right? And then they will have a vote. So just of the budget document will be debated in Parliament. It will be debated among the constituency councils, and then their vote for or against will also be a vote. That will be an attempt in terms of really giving people a true say, all right? We should have ministers and MPs reporting to the people on a regular basis. Allow yourselves to be interrogated. Do not come with a presentation to inform them of your plans. Hear what are the cries, what are the ideas of the people, and engage them from that point of view. Let the people decide, let the people guide you in terms of the direction. Of course, perspective could always be added in terms of technical experts, given a concrete guidance as to feasibility of ideas, etc. But my basic argument is that people must be placed at the center. And from what I have seen, people remain at the bottom. For example, the notion has been promoted that for anything to happen in the interest of the people, it must be through the arms of the politicians. But think about it. There are other means by which communities can be empowered. And one of the means by which that can take place is through the formation of cooperatives. I have been a cooperator for many years, both in the credit union movement on boards, and also currently as the president of the Chatham Agricultural Empowerment Cooperative Society Limited, and the vice president of the Federation of Agricultural and Other Cooperative Societies Limited of Trinidad and Tobago. And no government in the history of Trinidad and Tobago has really highlighted and promoted the development of cooperatives. Many citizens of Trinidad and Tobago as individual members of credit unions, which are the financial cooperatives, they have benefited tremendously in getting all of the amenities of life, educating their children, travel, education, medical, etc. But the potential is great in terms of forming cooperatives specific to particular developmental needs of communities. And the basic ideas of cooperatives is the question of pooling of resources for the collective good. That is the basic premise on which all cooperatives have been developed. For example, if you have 10,000 persons contributing $200 to the shares monthly, that's $2 million that you have coming in, right? And of course, people can contribute different levels. So we need the cooperative officers to be out among communities, educating them about the structure of the cooperatives, in terms of how it is formed, the constitution of your board, your various committees, and how it operates. So I'm saying, if cooperatives are established, and once you are a member of a cooperative, you are also an owner of a cooperative, right? And buying shares is one of the fundamental ways by which you fund the cooperative. And I just gave the example. Outside of that, projects can be organized, funding can be sourced otherwise. And these cooperatives, if they are geared at particular areas of interest, whether it's sporting facilities, whether it's housing cooperatives, whether it's agricultural cooperatives, as we know there's a big need for such cooperatives because we have an annual food bill of $5 to $6 billion. Most of the food we eat, these foods are imported. Even things like ground provisions are imported from Grenada and St. Vincent. So we're not in a good situation at all. So cooperatives provide an opportunity where a lot of the strain can be taken away from government, and it deserves greater attention. There should be a specific ministry, right, responsible for cooperatives. The last regime, cooperatives was under the Ministry of Youth. The previous regime, cooperatives was part of the Ministry of Labor. At the present moment, I don't know where that ministry has been placed, but that provides a golden, unexplored opportunity in terms of indigenous attempts to fuel economic development. Cooperatives definitely is a powerful vehicle of economic development. We can look at the example of the Mondragon Cooperative in Spain that was formed in a recession and today employs over 100,000 people in many sectors and is one of the top rated, economic entities in Spain, and it's a cooperative. It's involved in finance, it is involved in agriculture, it is involved in various forms of production. We can definitely do better in using that sector as a vehicle to promote indigenous development. So we have the phenomena up to this point in our country's history where Trinidad and Tobago has still not disbanded the previous Privy Council as the final court of appeal. Is it a question of lack of confidence in our legal minds? Our legal minds are no less competent than legal minds all over the world. We have heard concerns about the smallness of the society and the connectedness of the society. But if we truly believe in ourselves, if we truly believe in our independence that has been more theoretical than practical, we need to start the process of dismantling colonial institutions and forming the institutions that are a true reflection of the direction in which we need to take the country. So the political directorate now, in the future, and those who went before, what we need is for people to be inspired to take a greater role in their own affairs. When the people are inspired, when the people are confident in their leadership, they themselves will take a lot of action to promote their own development. I have not seen that in the history of the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, perhaps besides the